Hello and welcome, everyone. It's nice to see you all today. Um, I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to come to my talk in particular when there's so many great talks on here at Unreal Fest. So today I'm excited to talk to you about drones, landscapes, and chainsaws. And I will do a quick disclaimer. Yesterday, when the Epic team was introducing all of the talks at Unreal Fest, mine was categorized under UEFN, but we're not speaking about UEFN. So if you read the description, you'd know that. But if I won't be offended if at some point you get up and you leave to go see a UEFN talk. But I do hope there's things you can take away from this, even if this isn't your field of expertise. So um, before I dive in, I'm going to share a little bit more about who I am and why I'm giving this talk. And then I'll go into demonstrating how I use different tools like Reality Scan, formerly known as RealityCapture, as well as Twinmotion um, to handle different parts of our design process. And to do this, I'm going to show a variety of images and animations from a wide range of projects that we work on across the United States and Canada. We also consult around the world with natural playground companies specifically. But if there's anything specific technically that you want to go in more depth on, I'll be at the dev lounge after this, and you can always just come find me. I'm very approachable, and I'm always happy to share knowledge. Even when you get home, if you want to message me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to do that. So home is a long way from here for me. I'm Canadian, so I'm really thankful that my employer let me take a vacation / a work trip to come here. I started using Unreal Engine only about 5 years ago. I use it as a way to communicate my architecture projects. My background's in architecture, and that's what I went to school for, and still really what I'm interested in. And Unreal was becoming a really useful tool to do architecture visualization. So after graduating, I worked as a designer for a number of years, and I was always trying to find ways to integrate Unreal into my workflow when I could, even if it wasn't the exact tool we needed. I was really keen on trying to learn how to use it. And now for the last year and a half, I've been the visualization practice leader at Bienenstock Natural Playgrounds. Like I said, we're a natural playground and landscape architecture company based in Canada and the United States. And we've completed hundreds of projects all over the world. So this is my second Unreal Fest. In 2022, I also went to Unreal Fest in New Orleans. Um, the reason I'm bringing that up is I went because of this project. I was an attendee, not a speaker. So I was working as a designer for Colin Fournier, who designed a house called the Circadian House, which is lit entirely by natural light. So each of those nozzles there line up with a specific spot in the house at a specific time of day, which is coordinated with your daily rhythm. And Colin sadly passed away last year, but I went to Unreal Fest because I was tasked with creating an interactive experience for this house. And I was like way out of my league and I didn't know what I was doing. So I went there to learn a lot from the different speakers. So we use Unreal to visualize this project virtually. We still really want to build it. Colin gave me the opportunity to help him with that, along with my team members, Lorenz Kleeman, Charles Lincoln, Yufan Zhang. And that also ultimately led me to this moment here as well, giving a talk at Unreal Fest. Basically, I knew nothing about Unreal or making interactive experiences before this project. And so I'm really thankful just to the Epic Games community that it's helped me learn all these different things, such as how to do mocap animation on metahumans and make it run in real time. So yeah, like I said, Lumen basically made realizing this house possible virtually, and it was set on a digital twin of EPFL's campus. We really wanted to build it, but they wouldn't. We didn't have the budget to build it on campus, so we just put it on the campus virtually instead. And we continued to show it at exhibitions all over the world, in Switzerland, in Guangzhou, at the Design Triennale, and it will be at MIT Museum this fall for about a year. And Today, though, we're here to talk about a different form of architecture, which is landscapes. Bienenstock. Our goal is to connect 1 million children to nature every day by 2030. And so to achieve this, we sometimes work on the scale of a landscape like this, or the scale of a small playground. And we create projects where children of all ages and all abilities can have what's called unprescribed play. Think of it like it's like an open world where you can build whatever you want, make forts. Like if you're going into the forest as a child, that's what we do. And to understand how the tools like Twinmotion and Reality Scan fit into our workflow, I need to tell you a little bit about our design process. So the first thing we do is we draw, and these are drawings by our principal architect, Raj Mohabir. The reason why drawing is really important still is because it's the most free and that's intellectually and materially way to express your ideas. And with practice, it's also a really fast way to communicate your ideas. I just wanted to say this because we're going to be talking about digital solutions, but this is still very important in our design process. And we draw all kinds of drawings. We draw plans, elevations, sections, perspectives, and even our visualization team, which I lead, we also draw to communicate with the designers. And recently, in the last few years, generative AI has also been helpful for exploring those drawings further, not replacing it, but exploring other concepts really quickly, like those images, or these were ideas we had for a sculptural play feature. And then what our visualization team does is take those ideas and apply it to a digital model of a real site using Twinmotion. And because we build out a full 3D scene, it's really easy for us to generate animations, also create virtual walkthroughs for our clients. And until recently, we were doing this mainly in Unreal Engine, but Twinmotion has gotten quite good, both performance-wise and with realism, that we're able to do most of what we do directly in Twinmotion. So another example where we have an initial concept, we call these our Stumpville homes, and then applied to a Twinmotion render, a real site, and then we do an animation or a walkthrough. So there are three key elements to creating a workflow like this. The first is having accurate site models, and today we're going to talk about how to create those using RealityCapture. The second is using precise and flexible ways to model topography, and these might be different than how you've modeled landscapes traditionally, or with tools like Unreal and Blender and the likes. And the last thing that's really important is to use high quality 3D assets. And these shouldn't just be good for rendering, but also for other tools that we use in the AEC world, like CAD and BIM. So we'll start with capturing our site and doing aerial surveys with Reality Scan. So at some point in the design process, you need a drawing called a survey. I'm not sure how many of you actually are in the AEC industry, so I'll explain a little bit about what a survey is. A survey is a really precise drawing that shows the outline of existing site features such as buildings, roads, walkways, even things underground, and topographic features like contours. And surveys are expensive. We ultimately do get a survey done professionally in every project we do, but sometimes you want to get accurate site information that's not going to a professional surveyor right away. And you have some options. You can visit the site yourself, but if it's far away, maybe not everyone on your team can go. And you can also use Google Earth. You can use open source tools. But recently with drones, flying a drone over the site and doing a site capture this way is a great way for you to generate a drawing that's almost like a survey, and also communicate what's there on the site with your team members and also your clients back when you're wherever your office is. So I'm going to show you how you create a survey with a drone. So there's basically, drones have made this easier, but this is just someone on our team learning to fly a drone. The actual flying of the drone is really simple. which I'll explain. It's more the how you treat the information afterwards. So because of the time limit, I won't go into each part of this process in detail, but you can come find me afterwards. I'm happy to explain it in more detail. I'm just gonna, though, cut to the chase of what you actually need to get this done, costs, because this is information that if I was trying to do it for the first time, I'd wanna know. It's kind of hard to sift through all the information out there, especially in aerial surveying. So the drone we use is the DJI Matrice for Enterprise. It's a fairly new drone. We have also used the Mavic 3 Enterprise before. And when you buy one of these drones, it comes with a controller and all the software you need to do the scan. The key features on the drone are an RTK system and a mechanical shutter, which is most drones, consumer drones have a rolling shutter, which will create motion blur on the photographs, which is not great for photogrammetry reconstruction. So it doesn't really matter what drone you get as long as it has these two features. The Matrice 4E is around $5,000 US. The Mavic 3 Enterprise is probably around 3,000 now, and I'm sure you can find a lot cheaper alternatives than that even. When you weigh that against the cost of a single survey, sometimes it pays off. So then you also need a base station. A base station is essentially a tripod with an RTK system on top, pretty transportable. And we use the DRTK3. Yeah. RTK stands for real-time kinematic. It's a fancy GPS system. So compared to the GPS system on your phone, which will give you meter level accuracy, it will give you centimeter level accuracy, which is really important when creating drawings like this, because you need to actually locate them on the real world somewhere. The Emerald Reach is also popular, and these are around $2,000 or less to get that whole setup. And then you need Reality Scan. And so depending on your business, the cost of Reality Scan varies. It could be free, could be paid. And it's not very popular in the aerial surveying community, but it's really powerful. And I suggest that a lot of people start using it more for this purpose. So the capturing of the data is really easy. On the controller, you essentially draw an outline of the area you want to scan, and you adjust a few settings similar to photogrammetry settings. And the drone takes off, it takes all the photos, and when it runs out of battery, it comes back, and you replace the battery, it goes exactly back to the location that it left off, and then it stores all the photos on an SD card. A flight like this took about 30 minutes to complete, which is really fast if you think about how long it would take to survey a site that large. And I'll show you an example here of an 18-acre site that we flew in about an hour. So once you have your SD card full of photos, you go into Reality Scan, and there's a Map Wizard tool, and it essentially will take the photos that you used RTK on and position them in the real world and create an alignment for you. And I really don't change the settings often unless there's many issues. And with that alignment, you can create a 3D model. So here's that 18-acre site, and all those little dots are the drone photos. Then you create what's called an orthographic projection. Orthographic projection is a georeference aerial photograph that's true to scale. So you can use this to take measurements. But what we're mainly using it for is to generate contours. If you think about that survey I showed you, it had all sorts of information about the outline of buildings and walkways, and you can use the photograph in a concept design phase to figure out where those parts are, but the contours is something that the photograph doesn't show. So Reality Scan has a cut contours tool, and it sort of works, because if you notice that building there, if you didn't see the building, the contours here represent something that would be a really weird looking mountain. So you can fix that in Reality Scan. There's a tool called the AI Classify tool. It will go through all your photos and try to find buildings, cars, trees, features that don't represent the ground, and manually mask them out. And when you do that and you regenerate the contours, it's okay, but it's still way too much detail. If you give this to landscape architect, they're gonna be a little bit annoyed at how jaggedy these are, and also the AI classify tool is still missing quite a lot of information. We're still capturing like, barricades and rocks and stuff that we don't want in our contours. So what do we do? The trick is really to think like a surveyor would and just create the information you actually need. So I'm going to explain what we do to post-process these scans at a really high level, because maybe you can build a custom solution to this yourself, but maybe one day Reality Scan will add these features, and I'll also mention another tool that can help you get the results you need. So with the alignment in Reality Scan and the orthographic photo, another thing it generates for you is called a digital surface model map, and it looks like this, where those black splotches are trees, and the cars and everything are included. We really are concerned with just the raw data. And what we want to do is take a plane that's the same dimensions as that height map, the same real world dimensions, and use it to displace that plane. So each pixel in that height map represents a certain altitude, and we can use that to displace this plane. And what that creates is a really simple representation of our site that's super clean. And now we can start to think like a surveyor. Surveyor would go around the site and they would use a rover and take points and sample points at different locations. And we have a virtual site, so we can just do that virtually. So we can take points at a specific interval, specific pattern, and sample them. And we just don't sample the trees and we don't sample the cars. And there's certain things we're gonna have to add, like we wanna add samples where the retaining walls are, where the road is, where the curbs are. And then from those points, we can mesh it. And this is what, if you've received a survey before, you sometimes get a tin. And this is essentially a tin. And so this is how you get a tin from Reality Scan. And you cut your contours from the tin. And now you have clean contours. And finally, you can overlay that back on a drawing. And everyone's happy. The other thing I want to mention quickly is because you're flying a drone, you also have a data set that's really great for potentially what the future of site context is, which is Gaussian splatting. So you've done all the work to be able to create a Gaussian splat, and that's something we're experimenting with, but we haven't experimented with it enough to find a useful way to work it into each project. But I just thought I'd mention that because this is kind of a workflow that can create great data for your architects and the people on your team that are building, but also for rendering and the job that I do. And there's also, sorry, this is just those steps as a diagram. And then there is an easier way. You can use, there's a few pieces of software out there that will help automate this process. You can see there that I was able to sample exactly that retaining wall where I want it to be. Now we're going to move on to the landscape portion of this. Now that we have the site context. So modeling landscapes is really difficult, especially if you're coming from an architecture background. And you might ask, why don't we just use the pre-existing sculpting tools that are in Unreal or in softwares like Blender? There's many reasons. Mainly, they're not precise enough for what we're doing. We really hope that one day they can be. They're much more intuitive, I find, but they're not precise enough for us right now. They also struggle to create clean edges. If you're a person that works in rendering and you want to create a sharp transition between grass and a walkway, there's limitations to vertex painting. You can never get a real sharp edge. We've used Unreal before, so we were trying runtime virtual textures as a way to go around this, which is hacky, but it can work. But yeah, creating these clean edges is quite difficult. And these sculpting tools aren't really well integrated with other parts of the design process, such as sending this data back to CAD programs like Rhino or AutoCAD or BIM software. So there are some other options, but our favorite is a tool called LandKit, which plugs into Rhino, and then we send all the data from Rhino by Datasmith to Twinmotion. I'll quickly show how LandKit works, but I encourage you to check it out further. So we can take all the data that we generated in RealityScan, our contours, and we can use that for the pre-existing site conditions. If you don't use the contours, you could actually export the mesh from RealityScan as well and feed it into LandKit, and it will generate your site from that. Then we draw what's called grading regions. Depending on the design, certain parts of the existing site might be changed. The topography might be changed. So anywhere that happens is in the grading region. And then inside that, we have topographic features like contours, spot elevations, break lines. And finally, we can bake out separate meshes with unique material IDs, which is great for rendering. So it's almost as flexible as sculpting. This is a Rhino viewport, and you can see the feedback is like a second or so, but it's really precise. So I can put in contours that are given to me directly by the designers, and this tool will sculpt a mesh exactly to them. And it's pretty flexible, so it fits our workflow because it's as flexible as drawing almost. And what it ultimately does is create a pretty render-ready landscape. And then let's say the designer proposes a topographic change, which in a 2D plan could be really simple to them. But in 3D, it's a series of knock-on effects. This tool, pretty much we can make the changes, and then it will project all the surfaces down top of those meshes and recut them out, rebake them, replace all your old ones, replace all your material IDs, and you're pretty set to just send it to Twinmotion after that. And works at scale too. This is that 18-acre site that we had, I was showing you the RealityScan image of. And all the different colors there represent unique meshes with unique material IDs. And you might be like, why go through all this pain? But it's really the precision. We need things to be at very specific slopes, like 5% grade or less. We need radiuses to be at very specific dimensions for accessibility reasons. So we have to find a way to do that in a CAD program. And then in Twinmotion, we can turn that into render. And we create like 40 renders on a project like this quite fast. So we really build out the full model. And because it's a complete 3D scene, we can create animations, virtual walkthroughs. And these are animations straight from Twinmotion. All right, the last step here. Photogrammetry, carving reality. This is the chainsaw portion of the talk. At Bienenstock, all of our products are hand carved by master carvers using chainsaws. So the question was, why would we model any of these features by hand when someone's already made them? And that's a perfect use case for photogrammetry. Our old models were really in need of some love. And I find this isn't uncommon or the fault of us that are in the AEC world. A lot of the best practices that you'll see when you go to these other talks that are in the game and film industry, for some reason, like they just haven't made their way to architecture modeling. So we'll have models that are like, they have no topology, there's no care for poly count, flip normals everywhere, UVs all over, multiple materials on a model that only needs one material or two. And this can be a mess when you have hundreds of these in a single scene. It's really hard to manage. So one thing that we wanted to do was upgrade our model library, make models that are really well optimized and also will work when you bring them into BIM, like Revit, or if you want to bring them into CAD. Well-optimized models just tend to be future-proof and work in every tool, whereas maybe the other ones work in your specific workflow, but as soon as you send them to someone else, they're not going to like you very much. So there's 3 steps we use to creating these high-quality assets. And I'll go through each one, the time it takes, and how we do it. And if you're a 3D artist, this is going to be sort of beginner and intermediate knowledge, but it's important I think, to share, because a lot of people in my world don't understand the time it takes to do proper cleanup of models. So I want to share this in case anyone's out there and they need to show their boss and all that. So um, a rule of thumb is if it's organic, we scan it, and if it's dimensional, we just hand model it. We probably already have drawings that tell me how to model it, so I'll do it this way. If we do scan it, we have to clean it up. Unfortunately, we can't just like go straight to Unreal and use like a nanite mesh if we're trying to create something optimized. And the output from Reality Scan, the first output you get, is going to be something pretty high resolution. So we have to clean it up, and I'll show you what's entailed in that. And then finally, we recombine everything, so hand-modeled parts, scanned parts together, and we store those in Blender because Blender's open source and that can be exported to any other software in the future, any other 3D format like FBX or USD, etc. So I can't go into all the details of the reconstruction, but there's really thorough tutorials on the Epic developer community. But my two biggest tips are definitely wait for good scanning weather. Like every tutorial will say this, but it's very worth it because you'll save a ton of time in the cleanup process. We'll scan an object like that. It takes maybe 10 minutes to scan, to walk around with the camera. And then the reconstruction for something like this on a 4090 is around an hour to get the high quality 3D model. And then my other suggestion is you buy or make a coded target scale bar. So I bought these ones from paleo3d.com. And essentially it's 2 pairs of coded targets. And Reality Scan can locate these targets in your photos. And then on that scale bar, it says 0.4 meters and 0.5 meters. So we can tell Reality Scan exactly the dimensions between those points. And so in a matter of seconds, you can scale your model to real-world dimensions. This is great for rendering, but also if you want to, if you're like us and you're working with a lot of organic features, maybe, so in playground design, I didn't talk about this too much, but there's specific areas around everything that are called safety zones. They need to be very precise. We can't have a child falling and hurting themselves. But when you're working with trees and they're completely different each time, it's really hard to figure that out in drawing. So we also use photo scanning as a way to figure out that information. And then the cleanup process. So in Reality Scan, what you can do is basically get your high poly model, close any holes. Then that's closing the holes. Then your high poly model might look something like this. This is not even close to high poly. It's just the only way I'm able to show a wireframe on screen. The high poly would be millions of polygons. And you do what's called retopology to a lower poly count. And I'm using quads here, not because we're trying to be perfect and animate this, but because in drawings, it's a much more readable way of reading a 3D object. Also, you can morph this into different features because of them being quads. So the original UV map from Reality Scan would look like this, and it's kind of insane. So once you do the retopology, you can also, that helps you unwrap it. And these aren't perfect UV unwraps. A lot of the times we're doing auto retopology, auto unwrap, maybe with a few manual tweaks. And then we can transfer the albedo information from the original high poly to our low poly model. This cleanup process is maybe, like when you get really good at it, it takes about an hour with a bunch of various tools. But I'll explain another way to do it in a moment. So once you have that retopology model, apply our albedo, the other step we do is we generate a normal map. The reason we create a really high resolution model is basically to create this normal map. We can take all the information from our original and transfer it or bake it. And what that looks like in 3D, so without the normal map, it looks like this. It's very flat. And then with it, you get all those details back. And then you have your final model. And I just wanted to also give 2 more tips here. So Definitely hiring or contracting a photogrammetry cleanup artist is useful if you don't have a dedicated person on your team. So we do it in-house occasionally, and then also we have hired an artist, Maddie Lenhart, who helps us. She's able to do it 4 times as fast as me, so it just makes sense that she does it versus our team. And the other tip is generative AI to create variations in your models instead of rescanning it is also quite a useful tip. But you have to keep in mind that you're not regenerating normal information when you're using Photoshop to do this work. I'm sure there's some generative AI solutions that do both albedo and normal maps, and we really are just concerned about those 2 maps. You could, of course, create roughness maps using details that are in your albedo, etc. But for what we do, it's not pixel perfect rendering, so it's okay. And yeah, eventually you'll, in not much time at all, have a huge model library that's super high quality, useful for CAD, BIM, and other rendering engines as well. So finally, I just want to talk about bringing it all together. I can't go into detail on all my Twinmotion settings specifically, but I'm happy to show you that in the dev lounge at my computer. So as you might have picked up, we're not using just the Epic tools all the time. We're using software like Rhino to compile a lot of our models. And this workflow, though, works with if SketchUp is your main compiling tool, if maybe you're able to make Blender work or ArchiCAD or Revit. All those softwares ultimately work because Epic has a Datasmith plugin for each of these tools, and that will allow you to export all that information seamlessly to Twinmotion. It will transfer over your geometry, your cameras, your lighting, and materials. So here we're doing it in Rhino, and this is a playground project that's at a much smaller scale, but this works for pretty much every scale. And so this is what a Rhino screenshot looks like, and then when we render it with Twinmotion, we have something like this. And we're doing about 15 to 20 renders like this for a project this size. And everything here is default, except a few Photoshop parts that I want to point out, because that's only fair. But this is the default materials in Twinmotion, the default entourage. We're using a standard HDRI backdrop, all the default vegetation. And the only parts that we're doing with Photoshop are our entourage. Specifically, we want to be able to show how kids use the different features. And Twinmotion's children aren't very, they're not good for this part. So I hope one day. But yeah, thank you for coming to this. I definitely, I'm not able to go into technical depth on everything, so please come find me after. And I think we have a fair bit of time for questions, so I'm happy to stick around if anyone has any questions.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. It's really inspiring. I have one question. I noticed that you try to clean up the topology and the models in Blenders, and then you jumping it back to Rhino. I mean, do you have tips probably based on your experience, like what is the seamless way to integrate back then? Because Rhino is like CAD programs.
Yeah.
What is the best the workflow that based on your experience from Blender to Rhino again? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. There's really no simple answer because Rhino is a CAD program and it's using NURBS models. The UV tools in Rhino are terrible because of that. The UV tools in Rhino, it will convert your model to a mesh to do the unwrap portion of it. So yeah, we just stay really organized. We'll export the model from RealityScan to Blender, and then do all the cleanup work in Blender, and then just export it as an FBX back to Rhino, and then in Rhino, we'll do a grouping of all, because Rhino unfortunately will separate objects with different material IDs by default when you import it. So we just group those materials, group those objects once it's back in Rhino, make sure all the materials and textures are linked, because sometimes there's data loss in that process. But yeah, there's really no clean solution. Does that help answer it a little bit? Okay. Oh, thank you. Sorry, I think my hair is just knocking this over. Is there any more questions?
It's a little selfish on this one because it's just a problem that I had. But you were talking, so obviously you have a lot of expertise in this space. Do you have any tips for dealing with giant Navisworks files that get sent to you by clients?
Yeah, so we don't get sent a lot of Navisworks files, but do you use Rhino or any of these tools? Okay. Sometimes what will happen is I'll get sent Civil 3D stuff or not Navisworks, but things like this that aren't in the data type that I prefer working with. And to be honest, we just account for the time it takes to clean up that work in Rhino. Yeah. Unfortunately, because everyone in this industry seems to want to use different tools, there's just a lot of data cleanup involved. Yeah. One back there, and I'll get you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just one question. What camera do you use for scan? Or ordinary camera or phone or just like that?
Yeah, so I didn't mention those things because again, there's a lot of really great tutorials, but I'll tell you the gist of it. The camera is like the least important part, probably. You could use your phone camera as long as you have a photo that's not noisy and doesn't have blur. You could get away with an iPhone camera. But the specific camera we use is a Sony a6300, and it's a mirrorless camera. It's a cropped sensor, so it's not even full frame. It's not the greatest camera by any means. And then we have a 24 millimeter fixed lens on it, which is a prime lens. And that's also important just for getting perspective that's similar to what the human eye sees. And if you go through photogrammetry tutorials, they do suggest you use a lens like that. And it's a 24 millimeter just because it's cropped. And so you need to use like a wider angle lens to get the same resolution as like a 30 or a 35, I think. I'm not the best with cameras, so. But yeah, it's definitely not the most important part. It's shooting the photos, good weather, coverage of photos. That's a lot more important, especially when you consider that you can up-res photographs now, or like maybe you wouldn't up-res the photos that you're going to reconstruct. But let's say you create a model and you have an albedo map. You could upscale that albedo map and get some pretty high resolution details from that. Yeah. Do you have a question?
I was just curious about when you remeshed quads, was that just in Blender? Or?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's just an auto remeshing, quad remeshing tool.
Yeah.
I'm
really surprised there's no good ones out there yet. Like, this has been a problem for like 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely, if you want to control where the quads go, there's not a great solution for that. But I am also surprised. Yeah. Yeah, it seems like whoever invents that's going to be pretty well off.
Yeah, I think so.
For what we do as well, it's not extremely important that the edge flow is the same as it would be for like an animation character that you're animating. So the auto remeshing tools are perfect. Like I said, our goal is to get a lower poly count. It doesn't have to be super low. It's actually to create quads to make it readable. When you show that as a wireframe on a drawing, people, So it's less so to deal with
surface flow.
Exactly, surface flow.
I usually use like instant mesh.
Instant mesh. Oh, okay. Yeah,
It's kind of free.
Yeah.
Quite alright.
I found a really good plugin from Maya that works really well. But
Yeah.
And most of my friends when they do it, they use like ZBrush.
The returbo tools.
You can
brush up there.
you actually like control ISO.
Mhm.
You have to buy ZBrush.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. And also if you are an architecture firm like, a landscape architecture firm like us, the majority of us aren't 3D artists. So something like that, it's worth hiring 3D artists as a contractor, because then they'll have the software that you would otherwise need to spend annual subscriptions on. So this is another reason to hire someone.
Yes, I understand the importance to make the quad, but just before to import in Twinmotion, do you still triangulate the quad just before?
I don't purposely triangulate, but I imagine that it's auto triangulated upon import in Twinmotion. That's how Unreal used to work. Yeah, and so it's more the quad thing is more for legibility than it is for optimization. And in Twinmotion, actually, I don't think anything's converted to nanite either. So maybe there is an optimization use case too. Like to be honest, my Rhino model is going to crash way before my Twinmotion scene if I have like million polygon models of benches everywhere. But I hope one day that in Twinmotion they support nanite as well, mainly because maybe it is under the hood. I couldn't tell you, but that way we could create more performant walkthroughs and things like that.
Thank you. I say that because I understand that some software they triangulate differently. Twinmotion or Unreal, I don't know if it's the case.
It wouldn't necessarily matter, I think, because your UV map, or from what I understand, when a software triangulates upon import, if you're able to like relook at your UVs, you would still have the outline of the UV you made in quads, and then between each quad, it would just add a slash, and so all your UV information should be retained. And the only downside would be if that software that did that and you were trying to animate or morph within like using modeling tools that are available, then it wouldn't be great. But I'm sorry, I don't really know if it's doing that on import. I don't look at my wireframe in Twinmotion. It might be an option, but I'm not sure if you can even view in wireframe.
Thank you. Did you bring back the models to the designer for the working drawings? In what kind of format? And did they happy with the clean-up models?
Yes, thank you. They're very happy with the cleaned up models because so I'll tell you how we turn that into a drawing. In Rhino, or it's usually Rhino, but some of our designers will import into SketchUp to do the same thing. You create a 2D line drawing, which essentially will take the wireframe of that model and create line work of it just by projecting whatever the camera view's at onto the model, creating the lines. And then you're able to export that as a DWG, which is like a typical format that represents line work. Then our team mainly is using AutoCAD. They're able to bring that in as a DWG. And ultimately, the reason they're more happy with it is because there's less lines. So it's more lightweight in their AutoCAD files. But also, if you work a lot with drawings, adding line weights to drawings is very particular. So the less lines you have, the better. You might need to do further cleanup work still, but it's just so so much less. If you did that with like the log, with all the bark, you'd have so many tiny little edge lines. So yeah, hope that helps.
Thank you.
All right. It's just a way to create line work from very organic things. Yeah. It'd be nice if it was hard edges, because then it'd be so clean.
Hey, yeah, so a theoretical, if you needed to do a whole theme park that was, say, 5 by 5 kilometers, would that workflow into Twinmotion be like a good scalable solution, or would you go to like Unreal with World Partition and other things? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a great question. It would depend on how much detail, like what is your end goal? If your end goal is to create really close-up visuals from each section of that project, that's going to be a lot of close-ups and a lot of detail. And I don't think on a 5 kilometer by 5 kilometer project, Twinmotion would handle that very well. If you were mainly doing aerials and you could get away with not showing every single detail, it would be fine. I don't know what it translates to in metric, but that one project we did that was 18 acres, it runs at almost 30 FPS in Twinmotion on a 4090 in real time. So it's still pretty performant, and that's maybe not even using, because I'm not sure what's under the hood. I don't think it's using nanite either.
And does Twinmotion play nice with Unreal? Can you sort of import the project into Unreal if you wanted to do extra rendering photorealism?
Yeah, we started using Unreal originally, and it was just we spent a lot of time creating master materials to then create unique materials for translucent things that had subsurface. Originally we used Unreal. It just took so much time. Then the reason we went to Twinmotion is because all the things we really needed are already built in. And then also because you can push the project from Twinmotion to Unreal, again, through Datasmith. And you can then animate it further or do the walkthrough there, or if you're creating an interactive experience. But it's not super seamless. There's a lot of things that aren't supported still. The vegetation in Twinmotion isn't the same as a Megascan's vegetation. Some of it is Megascan's, but a lot of the trees aren't. Those won't translate well. The animated characters don't translate. So there's certain things that are lost, and ultimately you're going to have to do a lot of work still once you get into Unreal.
Does it instance the materials correctly?
If you use the default, so another reason to use mainly default stuff instead of custom things in Twinmotion is because those will translate well, but with like one master material for the type, if it's translucent or if it's just like a standard default shader. But if you start creating all sorts of custom materials, then those don't get instanced. Each one is like a separate master material once you go into Unreal. Yeah.
And does it create a landscape mesh in Unreal based off or is it just like a baked
mesh?
Yeah, baked mesh. Okay.
And so you're not able to use like all the great landscape features, but you'll have access to nanite, so you can turn that mesh into a nanite mesh. I don't know what the Epic's doing, but the new landscape system I think is mesh based as well, and it's probably based on the principle that you can use nanite on it. So this is kind of like more in line with that way of thinking anyways. You could also you can take that original height map from RealityScan and use that as a height map to displace a normal landscape in Unreal. If you really want to start getting into just landscape materials and being able to scatter that way, which is really nice. Yeah. Any more questions? All right. I just wanted to thank you all again for coming. I'll be in the dev lounge and thank you.